The Lanteria HR system offers HR managers the ability to regulate HR processes in a semi-automated fashion. These processes can be started automatically or manually for any employee, depending on the status of the employee. So for example, we can start processes automatically for any new employee or a starter employee or anyone that's been terminated. We can also do manual HR processes for any other process that might be required in your organization. An HR process in Lanteria consists of a number of different steps or a checklist in a workflow that must be completed by various employees in regards to another employee. So, for example, what we see here is we see a new employee onboarding process has been started for David Morgan. We actually see who the process is for. So all of the steps in here won't necessarily be assigned to David Morgan, but they will be regarding this particular employee. So if we open up the process here, we can actually see all the steps that are required and their current status as well, whether they've been completed or not. As you see here, we see all of the steps that are part of the HR process. We also see the current status of those steps. In this case, we actually see whether the action is completed or not, or we can actually mark that item as complete. We can upload the document and so on. Over here, we actually see the name and the description of the step, the start and the due date of it, and also which individual is responsible for it. In this case, we see the system administrator, Montgomery Burns, is responsible for all of these. That is to say, the job role and the individual as well. We also see who is responsible here, the employee, for example, and other individuals throughout the system who are responsible for this. For each step, we can mark it as complete if it's an actionable step, or we can simply upload a document or do whatever else the step requires. Any forms that we see or any documents that are uploaded will appear over here on the right-hand side. When we're creating our HR processes, we can structure in a couple of different ways. We can structure from within a checklist or from within a workflow. When we open our HR process template, we can see the number of steps that are currently required. Now, if we're working in the form of a checklist, we see all actions are set within a single step. However, if we change this to a workflow, we can see the breakdown of all the actions into separate steps. The only difference with this is that each action will not be actionable until all of the actions of the previous step are completed. So as you see here, we have 3 steps. We have step 1, 2, and 3. In this case, step 2 will not begin. Neither of these actions will begin until step 1 is completed, or rather all of the actions of step 1 are completed. Likewise, no one will receive any notifications for step 3, or this action will not be actionable until all of the items in step 2 are completed. This allows for us to have a greater degree of control in terms of who's completing which steps in our HR process and what is necessary. Now, what we're looking at here is an HR process for an onboarding process. Right? We have a new employee. The auto start is set to new employee. So when we create a new employee in our system, this process is automatically started, just as we see over here with David Morgan. If we go back in here, we can actually edit each of these individual steps. Now, creating an action within a step gives us a number of different options. We can create an action itself, or rather a task, a notification, a fill form, or an upload a document. With each of these items, there are specific things that must be done. So with a task, for example, a task is a physical task that the responsible person should complete. When they receive the notification to do that thing, they should do it, and then they should go into their HR process and mark that item as complete. If, of course, the action step is an upload document, then they should have to upload the document that's required in order for that step to be marked as complete. A notification will send a notification to the responsible person's email and will require no further action from them. A fill form provides someone the opportunity to actually open up a form inside of Lanteria and fill out the fields that are required. That information will then be saved in Lanteria database and can be accessed later or generated on a report. Down here, we can also take the steps and assign them to a particular role. These are all most of these are system roles primarily, but we can also sort according to job role. If in this case we can choose if the employee is the one that's responsible, then the person for whom the process has begun is then responsible. They receive a notification. And then manager. A custom allows us to specify specific user. A starter is someone with the status of a starter or a new employee in the system. Likewise, the local HR, or we can specify by job role. We can create an independent working group and assign it to all members of that working group, or we can assign it to the HR. In the case of certain system roles, like the HR and the local HR, if an employee has more than one of them, then all of them will receive notifications to complete that step. Mapped out all of our steps and we've decided what our process should look like, then the question remains of how people interact with these things. Well, in this case, for each action that happens when the step is opened, then the responsible person receives a notification via email inviting them to come and complete the task. It will provide the name of the task and provide them a link to their action steps where they can open and then complete that step or read further details on it. A person, whether they're or a manager or an employee, anyone who's responsible for a particular action can actually go on to their to their employee homepage and go over to the My Actions page. On the My Actions page, they'll then see a list of all the responsible actions that they have to complete for a particularly given HR process. So as you can see here, we've got our actions over here that are necessary, and we have the name and the description of each one. While onboarding and offboarding workflows are easily the most common workflows that you're going to have to interact with in HR, you can use the HR process designer for pretty much any kind of process that you need to have set up in your organization. If you have, for example, certain processes regarding requisitioning of new materials or office supplies or equipment for a particular department, you can put that process in here and you can initiate that process when it's necessary. So instead of having to go around and notify all the individuals involved in that kind of process regularly, they'll now have an automated system. So by manually launching a single process for a particular employee, we can now automate a great deal of our organizational HR processes. Concludes this presentation on Lanteria's HR processes. Thanks for watching.